I never thought I'd be telling this story, but here I am, trying to make sense of how my life turned upside down in just 6 months. My wife and I had been together for 17 years, married for 15 of those years, and we had a 13-year-old daughter. Everything seemed perfect until it wasn't. I discovered messages on my wife's phone that revealed she'd been having an affair with my business partner for 3 years. Nick and I had started our tech consulting company 5 years ago after working together at our previous job. We were good friends, or at least I thought we were, which made the betrayal even worse. When I confronted my wife about the messages, she didn't even try to deny it. Instead, she told me she was tired of pretending and wanted to leave. I was completely blindsided. I had no idea she was unhappy in our marriage. In my shock, I even suggested we could work things out, but she just got irritated. That's when she dropped another bomb. She told me she had only married me because she got pregnant and didn't want to be alone. She claimed she had tried to love me for 15 years but couldn't, and now that she had found real love, she wasn't going to let me hold her back. The divorce process was surprisingly quick. She didn't ask for any settlement or alimony, and we divided our assets fairly. Looking back, I realized she just wanted to get it over with so she could move on with her new life. When I confronted Nick about the affair, he apologized and said he had wanted to tell me earlier but couldn't find the right way. Within weeks, he had sold his shares in our company and sent me an email saying they were moving to Chicago. My wife had gotten a job offer there, and Nick had a cousin who owned a business he could work with. The next 2 months were tough for my daughter and me, but we managed. I threw myself into running the business, determined to provide my daughter with the future she deserved. My wife made no effort to stay in touch with our daughter, despite having partial custody. This hurt our daughter deeply, and she grew increasingly resentful of her mother's abandonment. Just when things were starting to feel somewhat normal again, my wife showed up at our door one night around 11 p.m. My daughter was already in bed when we heard frantic knocking. Through the window, we could see it was my wife. My daughter asked me not to open the door, but I thought it must be important for her to show up so late. As soon as I opened the door, she started yelling about filing a lawsuit against me. She accused me of hiding Nick's true nature for her to punish her for cheating. She pulled up her sleeve to show me a bandage on her arm. Apparently, things hadn't been going well in Chicago. They had been fighting constantly, with Nick blaming her for ruining his life because he had to leave the business he helped build. The previous night, during an argument, he had thrown a vase at her, cutting her arm. She was convinced I had known about his violent tendencies and hidden them from her as revenge. She said she had done me a favor by not fighting for anything in the divorce, and I couldn't even protect her in return. The whole thing was absurd. I'd only known Nick in a professional setting. How could I have known about this side of him? While we were arguing, my daughter came downstairs and interrupted. When my wife told her to stay out of it, my daughter surprised us both. She told her mother that she had no right to come to our house demanding anything after abandoning us. She called her mother selfish and reminded her that she hadn't even bothered to keep in touch with her own daughter because she was too busy with her new life. My daughter's words hit hard. She told her mother that she had failed both as a wife and a mother, and now she would have to deal with the consequences of her choices on her own because we were no longer her family. Then my daughter slammed the door in her face. I could hear my wife crying outside, but I didn't check on her. I was proud of my daughter for standing up for us, even though it was hard to see her have to grow up so fast because of all this. 3 days later, my wife returned, this time with a lawyer. She demanded full custody of our daughter, claiming I had turned our daughter against her. According to her, she hadn't kept in touch with our daughter after the affair because she didn't want to disrupt our lives further. Now she was threatening to take me to court because she couldn't allow me to poison our daughter's mind against her. The irony was that she had done all the damage herself. She was the one who had told her daughter about the affair in an email shortly after moving out, without even discussing it with me first. When our daughter had wanted to talk to her about it, my wife refused, saying she was too busy with the divorce proceedings. Now she was trying to blame me for their broken relationship. I spoke to my daughter about her mother's custody threat, not wanting to keep any secrets from her. She had already proven she could handle difficult situations, and even though it pained me to see her dealing with adult problems, I knew she needed to be prepared. My daughter made it clear she wanted nothing to do with her mother, at least for now. She said maybe someday she'd be ready to rebuild their relationship, but right now the wounds were too fresh. I couldn't blame her. She and her mother used to be close before all this happened, and the betrayal hit her hard. When the custody notice officially arrived, my lawyer and I immediately contested it. The day before our first mediation session, I got an unexpected call from Nick. He wanted to know where my wife was, saying he had been trying to reach her for days. I saw an opportunity and told him she was here fighting for custody of our daughter. I figured if he came to talk to her, he might convince her to go back to Chicago and maybe even give up her custody fight. Nick took the bait completely. He had no idea I was using him to solve my problem. My lawyer agreed it was smart thinking. Even though we had a strong case, avoiding a court battle would save everyone time and stress. The first mediation session went exactly as expected. My wife refused to listen to anything we said and stormed out after just 30 minutes. When I got home with my daughter that afternoon, Nick was waiting on our doorstep. He looked terrible, like he hadn't slept in days. I told him to leave. I had already helped him more than I should have, considering what he'd done to my family. But he broke down crying on my porch steps, saying my wife hadn't responded to any of his messages since their fight. It was irritating to watch him act like I owed him help after he'd had an affair with my wife for 3 years. I sent my daughter inside and told Nick I was done with both of them. I gave him my wife's parents' contact information and told him to try reaching her through them. He tried apologizing again, saying he hadn't meant to hurt me, but had fallen in love. I didn't want to hear it and just stayed quiet until he left. The whole situation was exhausting. I kept hoping they would work things out and move back to Chicago, leaving my daughter and me in peace. Most days, I felt numb, just going through the motions and waiting for it all to end. A few days later, my wife officially ended the mediation sessions and said she wanted to take everything to court. We all knew she didn't stand a chance, but she seemed to be in denial about that. Then, out of nowhere, she and Nick showed up at my house together. Since my daughter was homesick that day, I told him to meet me at a nearby coffee shop. I asked my mom to watch my daughter and want to hear what they had to say. They started with apologies about everything they put me through, but I cut them off. I wasn't interested in fake apologies. I just wanted to know why they were here. They finally got to the point. They admitted they weren't happy in Chicago. My wife missed our daughter, and Nick missed running his own business. They had a proposal. My wife wanted our daughter to visit her every weekend or at least every other weekend, and Nick wanted to come back as a partner in the company and start a branch in Chicago. The most ridiculous part was that they needed an answer within days because my wife's job wouldn't let her work remotely anymore. They actually thought I would consider this. I told them straight up that none of it was happening. Nick had officially resigned and sold his shares. I had it in writing and wasn't about to trust him again. As for my wife's request, I wasn't going to make our daughter travel back and forth every weekend just because her mother had chosen to move away. They tried arguing that they were willing to compromise to avoid court, but I laughed at that. We all knew they had no chance in court. That's why they were trying to negotiate with me directly. I told them the only thing I would do was talk to our daughter about seeing her mother when she visited town, but that would be our daughter's choice. They could take it or leave it. My wife, probably realizing this was the best offer she would get, quickly agreed. I left them at the coffee shop and went home to my daughter, knowing I would have to have another difficult conversation with her soon. But I was determined to let her make her own choice about seeing her mother. I wouldn't force her either way. When I talked to my daughter about seeing her mother, she said she needed time to think about it. I respected her decision and told my wife to wait for our daughter to process everything. Since then, we haven't heard from either of them. They're still in Chicago as far as I know, and honestly, I don't care if they're working out their problems or not. I'm just glad they've finally left us alone. These past few months have given me time to focus on what really matters. I've been expanding the business, taking on new clients, and spending more quality time with my daughter. She's doing better in school now that all the drama has settled down, and she's even joined the school debate team. It makes me proud to see her channeling her experiences into something positive. Last week, I ran into my wife's sister at the grocery store. She tried to tell me how my wife was doing, but I politely cut her off. I told her I appreciated her thinking of us, but we've moved on and don't need updates about my wife's life anymore. She seemed surprised, but understood. It felt good to finally say out loud what I've been feeling. That chapter of my life is closed. My daughter still hasn't decided if she wants to see her mother, and that's okay. She's been talking to a counselor at school, which has helped her process everything. The counselor told me that my daughter is handling the situation remarkably well, probably because I've been honest with her throughout everything and let her make her own choices about her relationship with her mother. The business is doing better than ever. Without Nick's influence, I've been able to take it in new directions I always wanted to explore. We've hired some talented young people who bring fresh energy to the company. Sometimes I think about how Nick wanted to come back as a partner, and it makes me laugh. He really thought he could betray me and then walk right back into the business he gave up. My friends keep trying to set me up on dates, but I'm not ready for that yet. Right now, I'm focusing on being a good father and running my business. I've started playing tennis again, something I used to love but gave up years ago when life got busy. It feels good to have something that's just for me. Last month, my daughter found some old family photos while cleaning her room. Instead of getting upset, she suggested we make new memories. We've started a tradition of taking a weekend trip every month, just the two of us. Last weekend we went hiking, and next month we're planning to try rock climbing. These trips have brought us closer than ever. Sometimes people ask me if I'm angry about what happened. The truth is, I'm not angry anymore. I'm grateful. This whole experience showed me who really matters in my life. It taught my daughter some hard lessons about trust and integrity, but it also showed her how strong she is. And it taught me that sometimes the worst things that happen to you lead you to better places. My wife's betrayal could have broken us, but instead, it made us stronger. My daughter and I have built a new life, one that's more honest and real than what we had before. We don't walk on eggshells anymore or pretend everything's perfect when it's not. We talk about our feelings, even the difficult ones, and we face challenges together. I used to think my life was over when my marriage ended, but now I realize it was just beginning. Sure, this isn't the life I planned, but maybe it's better. It's more authentic, more meaningful, and completely ours. My daughter and I have learned that family isn't about who's supposed to be there. It's about who actually shows up, who stays, who puts in the work. The other day, my daughter told me she's proud of how we handled everything. She said she used to think perfect families were the ones where nothing bad ever happened, but now she knows they're the ones who stick together and grow stronger when things get tough. Hearing that from her made all the hard times worth it. So here we are, 6 months after that night my wife showed up at our door, and our life looks completely different. But different turned out to be exactly what we needed. We're not waiting anymore, not for apologies, not for explanations, not for anything. We're just living our life, making it better every day, and that's the best revenge anyone could ask for. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with friends or family who might enjoy it too. Your support means a lot. And if you have any thoughts, questions, or story ideas, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next story.